Hi, this is Mr. Bo from MrBoEnglish.com. We have been going through the quadratics unit in Khan Academy and showing you how to do the practice problems. We're going to start working on the quadratic formula today, and there are two practices in this lesson, and so we're going to do two videos on it, one on each practice. But let's start and talk about what the quadratic formula is first. Let me get a nice little graph paper up here. There we go. So the standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c, and a lot of times there are many good reasons for us to find out the zeros for this. So if we have a quadratic, these 2 points, they cross the x-axis. There are lots of names for them. You know, the main name is the x-intercept, and then we have the zeros. It's a zero, it's a root, it's a solution. We can call it a factor if we want, because we'll factor using these. So there are lots of reasons to be able to solve this equation here, where this quadratic in standard form equals 0. And last time we talked about completing the square. Yeah, there are a couple of ways we did this. We either pulled a out and then solved here, or we could divide by a and go that way, and we ended up with something that looked like x squared b over 2a x and b over 2a x, and then we needed, right, something that's up in there and complete the square there. And we can do that to solve the problem, and we've learned how to do that. But if we do it with just with a, b, and c, and with no coefficients, no constant, just a, b, and c, we can get a very general formula that looks like this, and that is called the quadratic formula. So it's negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And you just need to memorize that. Memorize it in Thai, or you can memorize it in English. Memorize it however you need to, but this, in my opinion, in my opinion, this is one of the two most important formulas in all of high school math. So there's this one, and then Pythagorean theorem, and I should say secondary math, not necessarily high school math, but secondary math. So they are used a lot more than almost anything else. So if we have a quadratic equation, we need to do three things. First thing we need to do is we need to put it in standard form. Okay, we need to put it in standard form like this, equals 0. And then 2, we will need to identify A, B, and C, and then 3, we'll substitute into our quadratic formula over here to find out and solve for x. So that's basically the way we're going to do it. So let's get started. I'm going to write down my quadratic formula first. I'll do that every time. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Again, you have to memorize this, and 30 years after high school, I still remember it. And not like I teach math every day. I've taught math every year. I've taught lots of things. So still always remember this one because it just works for me. So we've got our formula, negative 5x squared plus 7x equals negative 9. So we have 3 steps, and our first step is put it in standard form. And this is not in standard form, so I'm going to put it in standard form by adding 9 to each side. Then I've got negative 5x squared plus 7x plus 9 equals 0. And okay, there we got x squared x and x to the 0 power. So that's in our standard form. And our second step is to identify A, B, and C. So let's see. A is equal to, B is equal to, and C is equal to. A is equal to negative 5. And B is equal to 7. And C is equal to 9. And our step number 3 is to substitute. Okay, so that means we need to put them up in over here. So x is equal to negative b, negative 7, plus or minus square root b squared, 49, minus 4 times a, negative 5, times c, 9. Extend that over here, all over 2 times a, negative 10. Negative, it's 2 times negative 5 here. So just did that in my head. Apologize if I went too fast. So now we need to simplify this part under here. X is equal to negative 7 plus or minus square root of 49, and I got a negative and a negative here, plus 180 all over negative 10. So my answer here is negative 7 plus or minus square root of 229 all over negative 10. And there it is right there. All right, let's look at our next one. I'm going to write down my quadratic formula here. Negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And the formula they want me to, the equation they want me to solve is 6 minus 6x squared equals 3x. I'm going to go ahead and add 6x squared to this side and minus 6 and do the same thing over here. And then when I get done on this side, I'm going to have 0, and I'm going to have 6x squared plus 3x minus 6. And we can turn that around and get the standard form for this equation. Okay, and so that's our step 1. Step 1 is standard form. What's our step 2? Do you remember? Step 2 is identify. Identify A, B, and C. And do you remember step 3? Step 3 is substitute. SIS. Substitute. Okay. So we moved it into standard form. Our step 2 is identify A, B, and C. A equals 6, B equals 3, C equals -6. Okay, and then my last step, number 3, is to substitute. We're going to have x equals -b, so -3 plus or minus square root of 3 squared minus 4 times 6 times -6 all over 2 times 6. Okay, so now I've got -3 plus or minus square root. It really doesn't like that line, does it? 9. I've got a minus and a minus plus times 24. 144, does that look right? 36 times, well, yes, okay, all over 12. So I got -3 plus or minus square root 153 all over 12, which is not over there. All right, so 153, what can I pull out of 153? Is that divisible by 3? It's divisible by 9, so I can divide by 9. So that is equal to -3 plus or minus 9 times 15, 16, 17. 9 times 17 all over 12, which is a -3 plus or minus, and this 9 can come out. We'll learn that a little bit later. 3 square root of 17 all over 12, and if we factor out the 3, we'll get -1 plus or minus square root of 17 over 4. And there it is. All right, we got 2 more here that we're going to do. You can watch me. Your numbers will probably be different again. They're almost always different. Khan is great that way, so you can redo the problem again and again. And you don't really lose anything. Keep getting better at it. If you need to practice, you can practice. But you can see how I'm doing them. I lost internet here. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so our problem is -7x plus 1 minus 10x squared is equal to 0. So our step number one is put it in standard form, and this is not in standard form. So we're going to rearrange these. -10x squared minus 7x plus 1 equals 0. All right, and with our second step, do you remember what it is? Identify. Excuse me. I have to sneeze. All right. Excuse me. So we have to identify A, B, and C. Here's A, B, and C. So what's my A? My A is over here, negative 10. Be careful, always look to see if there's a negative. If we go too fast, we can just say, oh, there's a 7, and I see a 7, write down a 7. But be careful, look for a negative. Okay, carry the sign 2, bring the sign with it 2. And then our step 3 is to substitute. So we're going to substitute into our quadratic formula. So negative b, so that's 7, plus or minus b squared, negative 7 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times negative 10. So we'll simplify that. 7 plus or minus square root of 49. I got a minus and minus plus 40 all over negative 20. And that is 7 plus or minus square root of 89 over negative 20. And there we go. The quadratic formula really isn't very hard. You just have to memorize it. You have to practice doing it a few times. It takes some work to simplify the radicals, but it works every time. So a lot of my algebra students like it because it's consistent and works every time. So this time we're just talking about solving. Starting next practice, we're going to work on what these things mean. There's 2 parts to this. There's the negative b part, and then there's the root part, and we'll have to start talking about what they mean. So let's see, our equation is negative 6 equals 3x squared plus 1. So what's my step 1? Do you remember? Standard form. So I'm going to add 6x to both sides. And I'm going to get 0 is equal to 3x squared plus 6x plus 1. And I'm going to put it over here. You don't have to do this. But for anyone who's a little not sure, take some time, put it back over here, so that when you get to step 2, what is it? Identify. What are we identifying? What do we identify? We identify A, B, and C. A is 3, B is 6, and C is 1. So that's our second one, and our third is substitute. So standard form, identify, substitute. So here we go. X equals, what might be, 6, negative 6, plus or minus square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1 all over 2 times 3. And that is negative 6 plus or minus square root of 36 minus 12 all over 6. And we're going to have to simplify a little bit more. Negative 6 plus or minus square root of 24 all over 6. All right, and 24 is equal to 4 times 6. So I'm going to be able to pull that 4 out here as a 2. So negative 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 6 all over 6. So now if I factor out the 2 here, I'll get negative 3, and I'll get 3. Okay. So I'm left with 3 plus or minus square root of 6 all over 3. Negative 3, I lost a negative somewhere. Lost a negative. Oh, there's my negative. Alright, so I lost my negative right here. Okay, so they've got the negative on the bottom over here, but it doesn't matter. That really just means we changed to a standard form a little bit differently than they did, but the number's the same. The negative, our negative here is on top, their negative here is on the bottom. Normally, this would make a difference, but we got plus or minus, so. Alright, let's get a new piece of paper. So remember, this is the formula. Whoops. X is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Probably one of the two most important formula that you will learn in high school math. If you have any more questions, please, as always, get a hold of us at mrboenglish.com. Mr. Bo English รับสอนนักเรียนตั้งแต่ป .3 ขึ้นไปทางอินเทอร์เน็ตในสไตล์ EP ครับ ผู้สนใจช่วยติดต่อครูแจงหรือไปเว็บไซต์ที่ www.mrboenglish.com